We shall bring the regular meeting of Weyburn City Council held here in Council Chambers at 5 p.m. Monday, September 23rd, 2019 to order. The first thing is we're going to have the approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting and strategic planning and priorities meeting held September 9th, 2019. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll make that, Your Worship.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Additions to the agenda. Mr. Warren?
Your Worship, there is none from administration.
Members of council? Mr. Van Betju is also duly noted that he is absent away on family business. Moving forward, there are no public hearings and notices. We have a delegation, proclamation, and petition. We have Wanda Miller here to read a proclamation of the Weyburn Community-thon, if you would.
Thank you. The Weyburn Community-thon is an annual fundraiser that supports community causes, and this year will raise funds for 11 community agencies that support Weyburn and area families, and an event that is supported by local businesses, organizations, schools, and hundreds of local volunteers. This year's Community-thon will help support Big Brothers Big Sisters Weyburn, Canadian Mental Health Association, Canadian Red Cross, Community Low Income Centre, CNIB Foundation, Envision Counseling and Support Centre, Inclusion Weyburn, Spinal Cord Injury Saskatchewan, Weyburn Caravan, Weyburn Special Care Home Auxiliary, and the Weyburn Youth Centre. The majority of funds that are raised by the Community-thon will stay in our community by supporting these community agencies, which they invest into the funds for their programs and services. Therefore, on the occasion of its 38th Community-thon, we are actually asking to proclaim October 2019 as Community-thon month.
With that being said, whereas the Weyburn Community-thon is an annual fundraising that supports community causes, and this year will raise funds for 11 community agencies that support Weyburn and the area families, an event that is supported by local business organizations and schools and hundreds of other local volunteers. Whereas this year's Community-thon will help support Big Brothers, Big Sisters, Weyburn, Canadian Mental Health Association, Canadian Red Cross, Community Low Income Centre, CNIB Foundation, Envision Counseling and Support Centre, Inclusion Weyburn, Spinal Cord Injury Saskatchewan, Weyburn Caravan, Weyburn Special Home Auxiliary, and the Weyburn Youth Centre. Whereas the majority of the funds that are raised by the Community-thon will stay in our community by supporting Community-thon's agencies, which then invest those funds into their programs and services. Now, therefore, on the occasion of its 38th Community-thon, I, Marcel Roy, Mayor of the City of Weyburn, hereby proclaim October 2019 as Community-thon month. I urge all citizens to cooperate in this exciting event.
Can we?
Yes. There's no reports of standing committees. We then move to consent agenda. Water treatment plant report, if you would. And are you giving a water treatment plant report, or are these reports just to be recorded? Okay, and the building department report. Do you have a motion, please?
Make a motion that the items on the consent agenda be approved.
Second?
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Any discussion? Mr.
The
McCall?
question I have, and I'm pretty sure Amanda can answer this one, the building permits showed an enormous number of about 46 million. Does that include the school and the culture center?
Yes, it includes both of those projects.
That's what I thought, but it was very interesting to see that outrageous, very good number, but all of a sudden you did the math, and the culture center and school is part of that.
Even if we were to take out those two projects, our value for construction value this year is still higher than last year.
I think we're doing tremendously well for the economy the way it is, and that was a very good report, Amanda. Thank you.
Just one question to you, Amanda. How about Weyburn Builds? How is that? Is that factoring into this at all?
You'll have to go up to the front there, Amanda.
Four of the permits that were on that report are for Weyburn Builds, since it was introduced and the boundaries were increased. We do have about 6 more active permits right now that have been started before we increased the boundaries, but yeah, that number is increasing.
Very good. There's no further discussion. Call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Accounts payable. Motion?
Thanks, Your Worship. I make a motion that purchases in the amount of $1,552,958.30 from September 6th to September 19th, 2019 be passed for payment.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Correction of minutes, July 22nd, 2019, council meeting.
Thanks, Your Worship. It's just a little bit of a house cleaning, not a big deal. It will not change in any way anything that happened at the July 22nd meeting. It's just in regard to some of the motions made in regard to the traffic bylaw and the acceptance of it. Just missed a motion. The amending motion wasn't stated as a separate motion, and it was a separate motion, so I just did a quick correction, but in no way does this change any kind of decisions that were made that evening. So I just need a motion to correct.
Do you have a motion to correct?
Your Worship, I'll move that the July 22nd, 2019 council minutes be amended as follows. Under Introduction of Bylaws, Resolution 2019-121 be amended to read, moved by Councillor Mickle and second by Councillor Van Betru, that Bylaw 2018-3379 be amended Traffic Bylaw 2016-3346, being the City of Weyburn bylaw to regulate traffic and control the use of public highways, be read for a second time. Motion lost 3-3. Resolution 2019-122 be added into the minutes as stated at the July 22nd, 2019 meeting. Moved by Councillor Mickle and second by Councillor Van Betru that the Resolution 2019-121 be modified to include the proposed traffic bylaw 2018-3379 be amended to keep the speed on Railway Ave 40 kilometers an hour. Motion carried 4-2.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
All in favor? Carried unanimously. The correction stands. Water treatment plant fencing, RFP. Nader?
The city of Weyburn water treatment plant require installation of perimeter fence to secure the site. On August 20th, 2019, water treatment security fence supply and installation request for proposal was posted on Sask Tenders and the city website. Quotation were received by the city of Weyburn by September 13th, 2019. A total of 4 proposals were received, the result of which, as stated in the attached table. After reviewing the submitted responses, it is recommended that 2019 water treatment plant security fence contract be awarded to Strictly Fences Limited out of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
Your Worship, I'd like to move that the bid of Strictly Fence Limited from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan for the supply and installation of a security fence around the perimeter of the water treatment plant in the amount of $27,760 plus taxes, which equals $30,813.60, be accepted.
Your Worship, I'll second that motion.
Questions? Mr. Mickle?
Thank you, Worship. Nader, a question to you. This bid of $37,790, is that cost share between the federal and provincial government as well?
It is a cost share. It is under the NRP fund, and it is one-third, one-third, and one-third share.
Thanks so much.
Mr. Richards?
Thanks, Your Worship. Now, just a question about the scope of the work. I'm nervous when I see that much difference in the quotes. Like, one of these quotes is more than double and a half again as much, and I just hope that you're clear with the winner about what our expectations are, because it seems like one of those two aren't clear on what the expectations are. Any thoughts on that?
The three first bidder, JW Landscaping, Nordic Industries, Strictly Fences, are on the same ballpark. The fourth one is out of the whack. Sometimes at the end of the season, you are shooting a bit high because you are not seeking for more work to do. If you get it at this price, that would be awesome. If not, so
Okay.
we are not running out of work.
Okay.
Mr. Mickle, one more thing?
A comment too. Strictly Fencing out of Moose Jaw did some work prior to at the airport for us. They were on budget and on time, and they did very good work for us.
And actually, this was one of the criteria that we selected them based on. It was strictly the pricing, plus we did a kind of reference check to see similar projects that they did on time, whether it is on time or in budget.
Any more questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Strictly Fencing has the contract. Introduction of bylaws, planning and development fees. Amanda.
Section 51 of the Planning and Development Act allows a municipality to establish a fees bylaw to collect fees relating to the cost of providing and managing planning services. These fees are intended as cost recovery to compensate for time spent by city staff in processing applications, doing reviews, advertising, approvals, enforcement, regulation, and issuance of permits, variances, and amendments to bylaws or the official community plan. The fees associated with the planning services have not been increased in many years, with the exception of the subdivision review, as they are stipulated by the subdivision regulations, and were increased in 2017. As such, the fees listed in the bylaw have been reviewed and some amended. Development permits for permitted uses is proposed to go to $100, and it was $50. Development appeals fee is proposed to go up to $300, where it was $50. Home occupation application is proposed to be increased to $250, and it was $50 as well. Sign permits are proposed to go up $100 per project, whereas previously they were $50 per sign. Proposed road closure bylaw is proposed to be at $950, which is the same as a zoning bylaw amendment. Staff recommends that council give first reading to bylaw 2019-3401 to amend Schedule A of the fees bylaw 2016-3342.
Do you have a motion, please?
Yes, Your Worship, I'm prepared to make a motion that bylaw number 2019-3401 to amend bylaw 2016-3342, the City of Weyburn Planning and Development Fees bylaw, be read a first time.
I'll second that, Your Worship.
Call, any discussion? Mr. Bailey?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Amanda, on the next page there, you have the whole list of other things. Other than those four that you identified, everything else is staying the same? Is that what I'm...
Yeah, the bylaw was based on the time it was taking staff to process these applications and council reporting. I went through the time that was proposed on the last bylaw and just made some amendments based on the time it's been taking us now, and came up with the fees on the same scale.
Okay, so if I go down to bare land, there's 150 plus 150 a lot. That's staying the same. It's
Correct.
we're only changing.
Only
those
these
four
five.
five that you
Yep.
identified. Okay, thank you. That was my first question. The second one, I know it's going to come back into my world, and that is the increase on the signs, and I'm thinking those are the portable signs that,
No, these are permanent signs. So they're
Sorry?
these are the permanent signs.
okay,
Portable signs have their own bylaw, so that's a separate fee. These are your fascia signs, your wall signs, your ground signs. When a new gas station gets a new name, it'll cover all the signs to replace the existing ones. Whereas
Got it.
before, we charged them for every sign they were replacing.
okay, thank you.
Oh, the $100 is per project as opposed to per sign. Okay, that's good clarification. The other point I was going to ask about, the advertising. Did they make a change that we know in the Urban Act or one of the Urban Municipality Acts that we no longer have to advertise in the paper? Or was that, Matthew, was that one of our proposed things that they wanted to cut out?
So as assuming a resolution, they're talking about some of they're going through our current Municipal and Cities Act, they're going to be looking at that as part of that.
Yeah.
That was a motion that they looked at during SUMA, and there was a vote on that, SUMA regarding that. That's something they're going to use within that, reviewing the acts right now. So that has not been completed yet by the province.
That's what I was just wondering where that was at. So
So
we still have to,
following-
yeah.
yep.
And so then with that, plus advertising, so then the advertising will go off after it's passed. Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thanks, Your Worship. Amanda, have you done any comparative analysis with some other municipalities to see if these are, I'll bet they're still low, but I'd be
They are.
curious to know.
Yeah, I did look at some of the cities with comparable size for development services, and we are still lower than most of them, so.
Okay, thanks for doing that.
Call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Amanda. No unfinished business, new business, tax concession request from 96 17th Street. If you would, please, Mr. Warren.
Thank you, Your Worship. So on September 4th, Council received a letter from Curtis Barassa in regards to formal request for a tax exemption on the property located at 96 17th Street Northeast here in Weyburn. So currently the property is owned by BMC Services, Inc., which is E. Barassa's and Sons Equipment Limited. And they've executed a legal lease to own agreement with the One Stop Life Center. So right now, the One Stop Life Center has been registered on title as a leasee, and interest in the above property, and they should qualify for exemption is a request that Curtis is putting in place for us. So right now, they're engaged in a lease to own. The lease to own agreement is valid for 10 years, with 5 years being the time frame for One Stop to have 100% of the lease payments applied to the purchase price. So right now, they're asking for this to be exempt from taxes. The way it works right now within the Cities Act is that a place of worship must be owned by a religious organization. So once a full ownership is obtained of a building, the city can provide exemptions. Or there's some options in place for other things that the council can do. So council can look into a couple different options. One option within the City Act is to provide a 5-year exemption, and that 5-year exemption would be for municipal and for school taxes. And if you want to have anything extend past that 5 years, you would have to actually have it reapplied by them, and it'd only be for municipal, not for the school tax portion of that. So tonight, to answer any questions, Curtis Barassa is here, and Howie Mercer from the One Stop Life Center is here as well to answer any questions that council may have.
Yes, we have to have a motion first. Proceed with it. No, I think you have to have a motion first, and then you can have the discussion. So make a motion to either accept or deny it, and then we'll vote on it, and then have a discussion.
Your Worship, I'm not that I'm challenging you, but in order for me to make a motion, I need more information to make that motion. And I haven't got that, just from that letter. That's why these gentlemen are here to answer questions. Could we not ask questions and then come up with a motion?
Well, then at this time, then I would take it that we'd make a ruling that all that is going to happen here tonight is just a question and answer, and that it's not any motion, and that the motion would, you'd have to come back next meeting for that.
Your Worship, I'll make a motion that we give One Stop Life Center and BMC Services a 5-year exemption on municipal and school tax. And I guess after that 5 years, they will have to reapply and do their due diligence.
Do you have a second?
To open it for discussion, I'll second that, Your Worship.
Okay, now we can have a recorded discussion on this. Councillors, go ahead. Mr. Chessel?
This is definitely a tough one. I don't think it comes across the city's desk all the time with the lease to own. I was in a similar situation with the service club where we were basically leasing a building on someone else's land. So we did go through the process and did receive a 5-year exemption, and so I'm feeling it's close to this. If what's stated and within that 5 years, if they are making their payments, and which really I guess isn't valid for us, but that's their business. But if everything does follow through, they will be exempt of within that time frame. So I just feel we are putting a small Band-Aid on it for 5 years for them at least, but within that 5 years, we'll see if there's some more changes happen.
Thanks, Your Worship. I just have some questions that I think probably you guys can answer fairly simply. Number one, so the way that I read this, it says that One Stop is registered as a leasee on the title, but not in any sort of an ownership capacity on that title. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, so so again, I'm apologizing for not knowing this kind of stuff good enough. So after 5 years, then the payments, if that's the right word, would be applied to the property, and then there would be an ownership transfer.
Correct.
But nothing until 5 years.
They can transfer to an ownership at any time. They can get 100% of their payments transferred to ownership at any time.
But the maximum amount of time is 5 years.
The maximum amount is 10 years, and at 5 years it starts to decline.
I see. But they don't register as an owner until 5 years, unless they pay up.
They don't register as an owner until they convert it into a mortgage.
Gotcha.
And having them on the title was what I understood would sort of help you guys out to get them where they need to be.
Yeah, because it's an awkward spot for us, right? Because it is eligible when they own the property. So what could happen, I suspect this would never happen, is they could qualify for tax-free status, but in between now and a year from now, back out of the agreement they've got with you in terms of that 5 years, but they would still have tax-free status as long as they're registered.
It could very well happen, but they're a church nonetheless, and none of the churches in town are paying any taxes. It's just they're all getting an exemption as a non-for-profit or whatever they're justified as. And I think the board that we have that's on this church is very reputable, and I feel pretty good about it. They've invested a lot of money into the property, and those of you that know the property sat vacant for 5 years. We've now got people from town using the property, which they're going to use water, and they're going to use electricity, and they're going to support the services of town, and it's good for the city. The whole thing is good for the city.
One more question, if I could, Your Worship. Curtis, would you be able to provide our gang with a copy of the title with them registered on it?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, perfect. You knew that's what I was going to ask, didn't you? Okay, thanks.
Mr. Mickle?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for clarification, the status of a church has been already done, like the certificate as being a church? We had.
Church since 1976.
Okay, so the documents, the hang-up here is the word rent? Is that correct, Curtis? Rent to own, or is that the terminology to use?
Leased. Yeah, ownership is probably the hang-up.
Yeah.
But we've structured it as a lease to own. So So we were able to put them on title. If it's not a lease to own, we can't actually put them on title. They're on the title. You guys have a copy of the title. So, and I was comfortable putting them on the title. So I'm hoping that that's good faith to say they should qualify for consideration.
So who actually gets the tax concession?
The current owner of the building, so Barassa's would get the concession.
Which is showing that it's going to pass back towards the church in the lease? Is that shown anywhere?
It is not, no. My understanding was that, I didn't know any of that they would be able to get the tax concession. The taxes, once they're leasing, just like a triple net lease, they're responsible for taxes.
Section 262 of the Cities Act says that there has to be a bona fide agreement that they will own it, and they have already stated that the lease agreement is not.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Teresa, could you say that again? I didn't catch all that. I apologize. It might be better if you came to a microphone. Sorry.
So I've done all the research into this, and I already gave all the information to these guys because they wanted to get it to their lawyers. And Section 262 says that if there is a bona fide agreement, and I have talked to Curtis about it, and he has stated that right now, and he also tonight has stated that as of right now, it could take them quite a while before they become owners or even have anything on title. Right now, it just says title holder. And we do have other properties within the city that say the exact same thing, and I know that the title people that are renting are not ever going to own the property. So that's just another thing here. There is another church within the limits that is renting, and they do not have a tax exemption. And they are a bona fide church as well. They have been since the 1960s. So there's not just One Stop Life Center as well. There's more than. So just because churches are registered with Canada, the federal government, that's where I had to find all this information. It doesn't make them exempt. It says right in here in section 177 that the case for exemption means that you have to own the property, and that's for churches. That's what it says. So this is all the research that I have done. I'm not trying to be.
No, that's very good, Tracy, because that's what clarification. And again, we're here not to, well, at some points we set the rules, but also when the rules are set, we're here to follow what the rules are in that.
And I did write a letter to council on May 7th as well, stating all of this as well.
Mr.
Thank you. Matthew, just a question, I guess, for you on this. As I understand it, they don't qualify as the rules stand right now. Mr. Barassa doesn't, and nor does the church. But it's within our jurisdiction as this council to make that exemption. Am I understanding that fully? My second question then, if something went astray on this agreement that the church and Curtis has, would there be something that we could go back and if we eliminated the tax, would there be something we could go back and collect those taxes basically that are now in arrears?
Yes, Councillor Bailey, you can. That would have to be part of the agreement. So what would happen if you went into any exemption? Council within subsection 262 -4 of the Cities Act says council may, in agreement, impose any terms and conditions that is specified within the agreement with them. So you guys can put terms like that within that agreement.
Okay, so, and Curtis, and to you, sir, I don't want to sound pessimistic here. I mean, that would be your responsibility, and I hope the church stays here forever and a day, I really do. But the city's got to protect itself too, I guess, is what we're saying, Curtis. So would it be in your willingness to say that if that did happen, and the church ended up moving out, are you coming back and are we having our hand out, are you willing to pay? You're not.
No, I'm not. No, I don't think that's fair. I think you guys have the power to make the right decision, and you guys can, the motion's been made, I think you guys can make that. I think there's a lot of other reasons. I mean, I employ 40 people now out of my new store where I employed like 12 or 15, and all of those people are taxpayers inside the city of Weyburn. The fact that my business had to go out there, I didn't want to go out there, but that's where I went. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you guys got to look at the big picture here, and I think that the exemption is not unrealistic for these guys. They've invested probably, if you put I mean, how we can talk about it, but I don't even know. I mean, I think if you factored in the labor costs, you'd probably put $100,000 to $150,000 in work into that building, and I mean, they're not going anywhere anytime soon, and they're going to grow their church.
What is the taxation cost? Again, for the record here.
I pulled the tax notice. If I'm allowed to say it, I will. This year's taxes were $12,172, or 72 cents.
12,000.
No, that's the full amount. Yes.
$12,700.
Just so you know, I did talk to some other cities about this, and they said you be careful because you'll be setting a precedence. And I also was reading somewhere that the city of Saskatoon does no longer want to exempt their churches, so that's something that people are looking into.
To accept which?
They don't want to exempt their churches anymore. It's something that's being looked into.
That's pretty progressive for, as liberal as what Saskatoon is.
And something else that he did say too about taxes and stuff like that. So if we exempt a property, then the mill rates go up for everybody else to make up for those taxes that we're losing. So we have to look at those things as well.
Teresa, thank you very much for the information you shared with us. But you know, I have to agree with Barassa's what they're saying too. This is a time in our community where that building sat empty for how many years? You have somebody in there. I was in that church. They spent a lot of money in there to where it is today. And in my clarification, it is a church. Are we breaking tradition? You know what? Yeah, we are. But you know what? Sometimes you have to do that to move forward. Is there another case? There's going to be other cases, and you handle those as they come to you. In this situation, I totally support the motion. It is a church, and I will agree with what has been said.
Am I able to make a comment? She was mentioning about renting in other churches in town, and each circumstance is individual of its own, but that is a rent. I'm aware of that other church, and they pay rent. We're a lease to own, and we've invested $86,000 into this building without labor. That is cost. As Curtis said, it'd probably be, you add labor, it's well over that. That other church is just renting a building. Don't plan on staying. So I think this is a unique situation. It's not just renting a building.
Mr. Richards? Mr. Richards?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I don't think anybody disagrees. I think what council's struggling with is anytime we circumvent legislation, the reality is somebody else is going to come back and say, you did that once, and we'd like to do it again. So we always get cautious when we go into an area where we're circumventing legislation. That's always an area of concern, and it should be for every government, although some maybe less. So I guess my other fear would be, I shouldn't say a fear, let me rephrase that. I guess the only other thing to talk about then is if we exempted this, Teresa, for 5 years, the way that Councillor Chessel's motion reads, that has nothing to do with it being occupied by a church. That's just an exemption we would do, like we might do an economic development exemption. Is that correct? Okay.
I don't even know where this would fall. We'd have to make, you guys would have to actually make a motion to tell me if it's like an exemption. If it's a complete city exemption.
Yeah.
Tax exemption. Exemption, where it's going to fall.
I'm not sure where it would fall.
Yeah.
That would be on you guys to decide.
So my thoughts on this is, again, when we get into any exemptions, tax exemptions all the way along, nobody likes paying taxes. There's businesses that have come up to me and talked about how they are failing, and they all wish to add no taxes. We've had homeowners approach and talk about not paying taxes because they can't afford to pay taxes. We're coming into a budget where we're going to have to ask for more taxes because we need more money to operate the city. This is $12,000 a year that would be exempted off it no matter what. So it becomes all into this, what we're doing. If you councillors would like more time to think about this before you make your decisions on there, we could always table this motion until next council meeting for you to stop. Check with other mayors, other cities, as to what they are doing and how they are handling it, and then go from there, as opposed to doing a rush decision now.
I guess, Your Worship, I feel this has been in front of us for a few months, maybe just on the backside, but this is the first time the council, so I guess my feeling is to vote on it tonight.
Okay.
Your Worship, just one question. That 12,700, is that just the city's share, or is that education also? Sorry?
That includes education.
That includes education. Do you want to break down?
So it's not 12,000 out of the city's budget, it's approximately half of that?
It's not half.
Yep.
It's a commercial property, so it's mill rate's a little bit different. It's not half. Municipal portion, which is our portion, is $7,733.78. So 4,000 of that is for the school.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Richards?
Yes, sorry, I won't comment anymore after this one, maybe. I know that you've got a motion on the floor, Councillor Cheslin, that I seconded it, but to pass that motion, I would be afraid we haven't got the homework done from the assessor's point of view on what basis we're making that exemption. And I wouldn't mind to give Teresa a chance to formulate a basis for the exemption. If we don't know if it's an economic development exemption, we're not really exempting them because there's a church, because there's legislation to cover that. So right now it's sort of just a blind exemption because we're good guys and they're good guys, and I agree with all of that, but I feel like we want to make sure we know on paper why we're making that exemption.
Councillor Richards, we're doing it exempt, it's because it's a church. That's the clarification that I'm voting on. That's the information that we received. Because it's in front of us because it's a church status that have exemptions.
The only thing that is not there is that the churches are supposed to own the property, and all we have is a agreement to at least a purchase, which does not say that they totally own, their name is not on the property, which is the difference.
Keeping in mind, Your Worship, this is only a 5-year agreement. So after the 5 years, if there is an ownership or no title, as I said, they will either have to come back to try and renegotiate, or will simply just start paying taxes. I guess that's because it's putting a little bit of Band-Aid for 5 years, but it's helping them take ownership over, because in retrospect, chances are it's going to happen. It's just helping them out 5 years earlier.
So churches in the area are exempt. They come from SAMA through the exemption so that their assessed value does not even show up on our roll. It shows up as an exemption. It doesn't fall under, like right now, the building is commercial, so it falls under the commercial. So if I tell SAMA it's exempt, they will take it and they'll put it in the exempt category. That's how churches fall. So it depends on if you want that to go on for 5 years, I can arrange that. Or if you want it to go into a tax concession, something that I would have to keep track of every year. There's 3 different ways that we can keep track of that. It's just entirely up to you guys.
Or would you be more comfortable if it was a year-to-year exemption?
Because after 5 years, if it's just a concession, like you guys had, there's 3 different areas. After 5 years, we can no longer do the school. They have to start paying the school portion. After 5 years, school board will only allow 5 years.
Unless that agreement has come to fruition and they are the owners. Right? Yeah.
Yes.
And do churches pay school taxes?
No, they do not. They don't pay any. They fall under the exemption and everything's exempt, so The only thing they pay is local improvements.
Pardon me?
The only thing they pay is local improvements.
I know, I said I was done. So,
This is final.
okay, I promise. One more question, Teresa. If this motion was to pass tonight, would you be able to do the things you need to do to give the exemption? Or would you need more information from council than what the motion on the floor is?
The only thing I would have to know is if we have to go back and pay them their taxes back for this year. That's all I would need to know.
You'd also need to know the max so that you guys want to go. So it can be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, all up to 5 years.
Well, the motion's
motion's
5 years,
5.
so that's what my
So
understanding.
what are the 5 years 19, 20 and on, or 20 and on?
I would say, because they came to me last year
Okay.
with all the information, I would really like to include this year. Just because they have done a lot of work, and this has been presented to council how many times, and I'm the same as them. I would like to just,
You don't want this around anymore?
no.
There's,
Your worship,
what
could we-
the other question, Teresa, what was the precedence that they were afraid, the other cities were afraid that we were setting here if we pass this?
The communities that I have talked to, they've had issues in the past with churches really, really believing they're exempt and they're not. They are only allowed to own so much land in some of the other communities that I have talked to. They bought land and then they were supposed to build stuff on it. And if you don't build anything on it and you own too much land, then you got to tax it. So then they're coming back, but we're a church. It really doesn't matter. You still have to follow all the rules and the laws that are set out in the Cities Act. And it says in there that you're only allowed to own so many hectares, and then that's it. If you don't build on it, put a building on it, and you're owning land, then you're not really worshiping. You need a build. I guess that's my understanding, is that you need a building, which doesn't apply here at all. There was another place that had a building, and then they built a new one, and they had absolutely no services going to this building, so it's no longer a place of worship. And they came back and said, "But yes, we still own it, but we're a church." And they were like, "No, you're not." And they said, "Well, we're still holding Sunday school there." "You better not be, because there's no services there. You better not be having children in that building." So so people are saying, you better watch what you're doing, because you're beginning setting a precedence, and then other places. I was like, well, maybe we'll have to just tell them that there is a bona fide agreement.
Right.
I did see the lease agreement. I have read it. I did put it in my report that I sent with you guys. And when I read it, and I'm not an expert, and I do realize that I did not see anywhere in there that says that they will own it. So it really just looked like, to me, an overglorified rent agreement. But like I said, I'm not an expert on lease agreements. I'm not.
Go ahead, Mr. Richards. One last time. I know.
Welcome. But they are registered on the title.
Correct, yes. And they have a copy of that.
And the agreement is to, at least to own.
The agreement and on the title is a lease to own.
Nothing on the title says the word lease to own. I don't think it can.
Oh.
They have a registered interest in the property on the title. That's why I was told to put it on there. That's how legally they do it. And on the lease, they would just be forfeiting everything they've put in if they don't convert. So they're just too heavily invested. It's just not going to happen.
Go ahead, Mr. Wheeler.
It's confusing. I've been listening to this, and I've read all, thank you very much. It was very detailed. Legal keeps coming up, and I wonder, has anybody within the city legal department reviewed it and said that this is the case? It is actually a legal document?
Reviewed the contract? Nope. We have talked to Sumo Legal about past precedent and what other municipalities have done with these kind of requests, but we have not had our legal review that. That isn't our place to have our legal review a document between two other people.
So just curious, is the lease to own, like if they both agreed to the terms and conditions, is the lease to own agreement, is it binding? And we'd give the exemption Like, I just don't understand that part of it. I was just wondering if there's anybody that can clarify that.
So what you guys would do within the 5-year exemption, you guys can put some certain terms within that. And so the term can include that if it's broken, the leases or the exemption is no longer there, right?
So if we go through and vote this through tonight, we don't have an opportunity to adjust those terms, correct? So are we prepared to vote this through and not fully understand the terms and conditions of a 5-year?
So you guys could amend the motion as well.
To approve the agreement,
Yeah.
bring back the
To bring it back?
That would be probably a smarter thing, because there has to be a clarification. If it is, and it really gets down to this, that if you own the property, it's a no-brainer, you get the exemption all the way through. It's all about this, how the agreement is that shows that you are doing it. I mean, it could go one or two ways. We could say no here tonight, say we're not going to do it until the 5 years when you actually are paying and all the stuff you do, or at which time you're going to do it, which again then becomes very simplistic. You're following the law. We're into a very gray area as to where we're at with all these type of things, Mr. Hassan.
But at the end of the day, we're taking, I guess, their word, their document, we're giving them 5-year exemption, and that's it. So really, to me, I guess, we're more or less doing it in good faith. I personally, I don't care what the document says. It doesn't matter. I feel we're doing it in good faith, that we're giving, based on the agreement they have, which I've seen the agreement, that this is what we're doing. We're giving them 5 years. If something changes within 5 years, I guess it would come back, there'd be no more exemption, but after that, there needs to be a new plan.
What if we put would you be amenable to changing your motion or amending your motion to include some clauses like, as long as it's occupied by the One-Stop Life Center, or a couple of things like that?
That's fair.
For sure, I literally just pulled that out as quick as I could. Didn't even know
We put a
what
few
motion to
conditions in
make,
there
so-
that if anything should change over that 5-year term, that would void the concession.
I don't know, Danette, if someone amends as per the agreement, can we state that? Would that be?
The two people that made the motion, which I have to go back to the bottom of my page, but I believe it was Councillor Mickle and Councillor Richards and Chesley. If you guys agree to an amendment, you can state the amendment, and it can be made without another motion, because as long as you agree to it, and then council can debate that if you wish.
Mr. Bailey?
Yeah, and this is my last word on it, too. I've been with this church over a period of time, working with them, and they have been here a long time, ladies and gentlemen, and are staying, as far as, I have that belief. I deal with rent-to-owns, not often, but it comes up every once in a while, and it is a legal document. It is no different than a bill of sale with conditions on it, and that's what you have in place, in my understanding. It's a legal document. You've gone to the point of registering it to clarify the exemption part of it. So I'm very comfortable with this being a legal transaction, and I think we have to put some faith in a group of people that want their church here, have been trying to be here for a number of years, as we all know, through various opportunities to get established. So I will be supporting the motion.
Can I just say one thing about your
Okay,
exemption?
go ahead. Okay.
If you're going to stipulate a timeline for the exemption, for exemptions and stuff like that, if they stop on a certain day, or you can use it as a whole year. I just want those things clarified, because I've come to quite a few of those happening with concessions and exemptions and stuff like that, where people have come to me and said, well, no, I'm supposed to have this full year, and it's the day of. So that would be something that I would really like clarified if you do make a motion, if it's going to be the whole year, or if it's going to be as the day of something happens.
And I guess the question gets down to this also. If we were giving it to you as a church on exemption, that money goes into your pocket. This way, we're not really giving it to you, we're giving you to you, Mr. Barassa. So then that becomes the idea, is this money being transferred to their pocket in a reduction of lease, or is this the same thing? Or is this not doing anything?
They're paying the taxes to me right now, so they have to pay the taxes. So this exemption is going straight to them to cover what they've already paid.
They're paying the taxes to you.
I have to invoice them the taxes because I can't get the taxes out of my name, but our agreement is that they pay taxes as a triple net lease.
Okay, that's what I'm just saying,
Yeah.
is that it's a triple net lease.
So they've already paid 2019 to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just another question, if I wish, Your Worship. So would you be comfortable as a starting date, January 1st, 2020?
I mean, to me, it makes sense that it would be tied to the lease agreement, which I believe was signed in February of 2019. So they've basically had possession of the building for most of 2019.
Just so we know what you're asking for,
Yeah,
Curtis.
yeah. I think if we're looking for a date, we have a date on the lease.
Okay,
Just a
thank
thought.
you. Yep.
So, Your Worship, yeah, I would, if Councillor Chessel is in agreement, I would suggest that we would make that motion to concede, is that the word, concede the taxes, beginning January 1st, 2019, ending December 31st, 2023, with the condition being in so long as the only use of the property is worship and the only occupant is the One Stop Life Center.
I would second that motion.
Actually, you're not seconding, you're agreeing to the.
Sorry, I'm
Okay.
I'm
We're
agreeing
just
to
amending
that.
your original.
You firsted it. Yeah.
I first.
No further questions? Call the question. All in favor? Carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Inquires and announcements? Inquires and Mr. Mickle.
First one, I'm going to ask Natter about how's the paving going in Weyburn and 16th Street, Natter?
We are doing the prep work since yesterday for Mergen Street. Today we were doing some prep work for 16th Street. By the end of this week, all the paving for 2019 will be completed, and the carryover from 2018.
If it doesn't rain.
It will not rain.
They say Thursday, Friday, so anyway.
I have one more thing, Your Worship. After 36 years of service to the City of Weyburn, our Superintendent of Public Parks and Works, Claude Morin, is retiring. His last day of work was Friday, September the 20th. Claude started with the City of Weyburn as a summer student in the Parks Department in June 20th, 1983. It's a long time, Claude. He worked as a summer employee until 1990, when he was hired as full-time park worker and assistant foreman until August of 2000. In August 2000, Claude took on a new role as parks planner. And almost 10 years later, on January 1st, 2009, Claude became the manager of park services. And in July of 2010, Mr. Morin took on his recent position as superintendent of parks and works. We want to thank Mr. Morin for his 36 years of service. He will be missed. Claude has left a mark on Weyburn with numerous projects he was involved throughout his career. Our city would not be in the same without efforts of an individual like Mr. Morin. Claude, we wish you all the best and have a great retirement.
Mr. Bailey?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd just like to bring attention to a couple events coming up in our city. Flavors of Fall, October 5th. That is in the curling rink. It's always been a tremendous success. There are new vendors coming in and new people with their whatever they bring, their food and beverages to show off. So it won't be the same old. So that starts at 7 to 11, and then an after party that is hosted by the people in our community, the young fellows that know how to party, I'm told. So that goes after that. The second thing is again on October 5th, and that is the Weyburn Youth Center supper and auction, and tickets are available for that also. So two good events going on in the same evening, so you will not have a place or a hard time finding anything to do that night. So tickets are available for both. Thank you.
So, a couple things, starting off with a couple of events. Number one, the Legion is having a reopening, 10 a.m. on this Saturday. And at the same time, Cultural Days will be over at Knox Hall starting at 11, which I have to attend both of those. We had the Métis flag raising here a while back, and a lot of the people from the Métis Society was very pleased with that, seeing that that was the first one in the province that was ever done. And so they said it was a very emotional event for them, and they thanked the city of Weyburn for that. Also, that I received a phone call just as an update from the SLGA in reference to our, if a lack of better words, our pot shops and the situation and here, because that was been addressed to me quite a few times. I made inquiries. She stated that we are one of 6 that are left in the province to have, and what has happened is that one of the people were disqualified, moved down to the second person. The second person in line finally decided that they weren't going ahead with it. It's now gone down to the third person, as in 6 other communities, 5 or 6 other communities, and they now have 45 days to make application to start in the new process. So it still could be another 2, 3, 4 months down the road as the whole process is being drawn along the way. So that's where all that stuff sits here, and before they even get to see Amanda or hear about our part of the city. So that is all how everything is going. Anything else? Are there any notices of motions for next council meeting? Seeing no notices of motions, I therefore call this meeting adjourned.